The music. What? Look at that. Cut the music. All right, thanks for coming tonight. We do these quarterly roundups. Once a quarter, we have 3 companies that we have screened and are going to participate in, and we invite people to come and listen to those companies pitch. This quarter, we're doing something slightly different. We're starting with a panel from some of the some of the best informed people on cryptocurrency and blockchain technology in the country, and I'll tell you why. We were raising money to invest into a couple of deals this summer, and we had no less than 15 investors that came and said, hey, I really want to do this, but I'm not going to invest because I'm putting all of my money into Bitcoin. And the question was not, what is Bitcoin? The question was not, how does Bitcoin work? It's not, what's the technology behind Bitcoin? The question that we get is, how do I do Bitcoin? Like, how do I get exposed into Bitcoin? So we organized this as a session to discuss how people can get exposed into Bitcoin investing in a sensible way. So what we have, we've got, first I want to give also a short anecdote about Bitcoin that I think helps very well. Bitcoin can be most easily explained in 4 simple steps. Step 1, I give a $1 bill to Sonia. Where's Sonia?
Here, okay. Use your mic so we can hear you.
Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me? Okay, so think about this. All right, I give a $1 bill to Sonia, okay? So that dollar has exchanged hands from me to Sonia. Sonia now has the value, and I no longer have the value. So she's given me a service, and for that I've given her $1. So that's the end of the transaction, step 1. Step 2, let's assume that the bill goes away entirely, and instead of actually giving a bill, I just transfer a serial number on that bill to Sonia. Same thing happened. I've transferred the value to Sonia, and she's received that value, but there's a problem with that in that I still actually have the serial number. So there's a chance for duplicate use of that serial number. So that's a problem. Step 3, introduce a bank. A bank would credit my account, debit Sonia's account, and so you have a financial intermediary that is keeping custodial track of how that transaction went. Step 4, imagine you do away with that bank altogether and you replace it with a distributed ledger of thousands of people checking the validity of that transaction. That is what Bitcoin effectively is. At least that's the way that I like to look at it. So, and you can tell me that I'm wrong, but why don't we listen to these people and they can maybe explain it a little bit better. Dr. Marwan Al Zarooni is he is the CEO of a company called Forsee Payment Services. And he also is the CEO of the Information Services Department of the Dubai government. Ola is the founder and CEO of BitOasis. It's the largest local Bitcoin exchange. They've had phenomenal growth, astronomical growth in the last 6 months, if she could tell you about it. And Darren Frankel works with Consensys. Consensys is effectively a blockchain technology developer for big corporates. They have 300 employees globally. They have 15 people in Dubai, and the founder of Consensys is the founder of the Ethereum, is the co-founder of the Ethereum project. So all 3 of them bring sort of very different perspectives, and we'll dive right into it. The first thing that I want to do is I want to ask you guys to explain what is the use case for people that you talk to, and I want to start with Darren. So Darren, I want you to tell people, why do people come to you and engage you? What are they looking for? First of all, who are they? And second of all, what are they looking for and what do they hope to achieve in adopting blockchain applications?
Sure, thank you very much. Thank you for having me as well. Very excited to be here. So we're still in the enterprise consulting space. We're still at a point where people really don't know quite how to grasp blockchain technology. You'll see a lot of development all over the world. You'll hear about this application here. Let's say it's a remittance application, supply chain there, trade finance, whatever it may be. But a lot of these are still very, very nascent, just like the technology is built on top of. Blockchain, especially smart contracts, is only a few years old, and the technology is still under development. and being tested each and every day with some of these public networks. So businesses come to us looking first to understand what is blockchain, what does it mean for my business, what does it mean for where I could possibly expand. And it's not just cost savings, because a lot of what's touted with blockchain, especially in an enterprise context, is cost savings for coordination between multiple entities, multiple independent parties. Blockchain excels when we're talking about sharing. Blockchain is not particularly beneficial if you're using it in a closed, centralized environment. So when we're looking at blockchain applications in an enterprise setting, it's things that leave the confines of my business and interact with the counterparty, with the trading partner. Those are the types of use cases where we're connecting these multiple parties together that we're looking to implement blockchain. And this could be cost savings, this could be efficiencies, but many companies are also looking at blockchain as how they can actually create new products. What does this new data and computing model mean for their businesses or potential business? And how might it disrupt their existing business as usual? And should they invest now to be the disruptor in their industry, or are they going to wait to see it happen externally? So that's a lot of what we talk about with our clients, and when we're actually building applications, it's those things in mind.
And so it's kind of, you were brought on board to conduct to execute a project, and that project is multiple months, and it's a large project. And who does it involve within the company? What are the typical sizes of the contracts that you're doing? What are the typical sizes of the companies that you're dealing with? Who are you engaging with?
So Consensys is a global company. There are multiple, but we have had two sides of the business for quite some time. There's both our product incubator side of the house as well as our enterprise consultancy. And how we're structured is one to inform the other. So we've had some of our biggest products right now that we'll be developing further, and actually some are going through beta testing. Those are supply chain, remittance, energy. These are all products that can you all hear me in the back? Yeah. These are all projects that we've developed with clients. Much of what we have in-house at Consensys has been the result of a direct need from the ecosystem. So building out a remittance project. So cross-border remittance has been one of the most widely touted use cases for blockchain. You'll already see this right now. Many of you here own cryptocurrency. So how do you actually start using that cryptocurrency to replace the existing system of correspondent banking when I want to send money around the world? So we've actually taken this use case from some of our clients. We're talking big clients, big financial institutions, big commodities trading companies, big consumer products companies, and we're talking Fortune 10s, 20s, 100s. We're actually taking some of what we've learned from these clients and created product. And so what you'll see over the coming months, especially with Consensys, but the industry as a whole, is you'll see some of these use cases start to bubble up to the surface, either through their token launches, or through pilots, or through production use cases. But right now what we're really seeing is most of these large enterprises are still just dipping their feet in the water. So we're talking proof of concept, prototype scale for most of these applications, but all over the place.
Okay, so you got Consensys. Consensys is going and servicing big sort of government and massive corporate clients. In Dubai, they do a ton of work. That's one level. Now you go to almost the consumer level, and you have Ola is the founder of BitOasis. Ola, tell us what just individuals are doing in Bitcoin.
Sure. So we at BitOasis are less on the enterprise blockchain projects and big clients, and more on public blockchains. So blockchains that have a native token like Bitcoin, Ethereum. You've got others such as Zcash and other blockchains in the future as well that will power different kinds of applications. So we believe most of the innovation on the consumer level will be powered by public blockchains. Obviously the technology is still at a nascent stage, so we're not still at the application layer of public blockchains, we're more on the infrastructure layer, and I'll explain a bit more what infrastructure means. So today for consumers to start transacting using cryptocurrencies in a streamlined way, so be it remittances or access to capital through ICOs, or all the other applications that you hear about being powered by smart contracts. We believe that you need to have enough liquidity in the market, in the sense that tokens being traded, exchanged, transacted almost instantly and low cost value for you to start powering or having developers easily building those applications. So if you look at like the exchange landscape as a whole, or the liquidity providers, every major market or financial market in the world now has a major exchange. They're trading cryptocurrencies with their local currency and then back to cryptocurrencies. So the more exchanges or that exchange infrastructure layer that you see it developed globally, you will see applications such as remittances, payments, online payments, micropayments, on the Bitcoin side, and access to capital, lowering the barriers to entry for investors as well into new asset classes happening in different parts of the world. From our own perspective, we are the exchange or infrastructure player in the UAE today. We're also present across the GCC, and we have plans to expand further and not just trade AED with crypto tokens. So we have also plans to obviously list other local currencies in the GCC as well. Most of our customers are consumers, so they're individuals. So we are a B2C platform. We believe once we get to the application layer, you'll see big clients such as governments and academics and companies, corporates specifically, being interested in token-based blockchain applications. But today, most of the people that you see using cryptocurrencies are individuals. Perhaps you see some funds and hedge funds also playing in that area as well.
Are there hedge funds here?
Today, no, but you see funds actually investing they're in their own money in cryptocurrencies. Licensed hedge funds are still kind of wary about stepping into that area until local regulation becomes clear for them. And at that point, I think you'll unlock a massive user base that potentially could start trading and investing in cryptocurrencies. But today, our customers are individuals that want to use cryptocurrencies for payments, or people who want to participate in ICOs, and we've seen that actually happening quite a lot in the past couple of months. We also have traders on the platform. Traders are important for liquidity. So the more traders that we have, the more investors as well that we have on the platform, the more liquidity you have in the market, and potentially a more mature infrastructure base starts developing in UAE. So today that's the customer base that we have, which is split between individuals, traders, and investors. And we'll start seeing more growth as well in those user base. And we didn't get to a point where we're maturity level. I think every now and then, with either a price rally or some good news around Bitcoin, Ethereum, or tokens, you see a new user base that is interested to invest either in Bitcoin or Ethereum, or actually start looking into ICOs and launching ICOs. We see a couple of startups in the UAE also doing that. So definitely an interesting time. We've had amazing growth in the past 6 months, as you mentioned.
Yeah. Okay. And Dr. Marwan teaches a class on how to invest into cryptocurrencies, which is kind of interesting. He's not going to teach that class right now. If you want to sign up, you can talk to him after this lesson. He's also not here to pitch the class, but he's here to talk about a couple of things. One, what do individuals look at? What are the problems that they're having when they're what are the problems that they're trying to address when they're investing into Bitcoin? And then we also want to talk about how is the regulatory framework for individuals investing into cryptocurrencies? How is that evolving here in the UAE?
Thank you for having me, first of all. I started a business in 2014 called Forsee Payment Solutions, and the idea was at that time, in 2014, I thought that everyone will move into blockchains and be very smooth transition into this space. But I found out that regulation was a huge issue. So I started thinking, okay, how can we build up the ecosystem here in UAE to help first the regulators and then the public to get invested into this kind of alternative economy, which has a lot of potential. It's like Internet 3.0. So what I did is I started with the regulators. So I went and personally and talked to a number of regulators and also the lawmakers and also law enforcement and asked them, what is the thing that's stopping you from letting cryptocurrencies come into the market? And it was basically the bad image that Bitcoin had, which is the currency for drug dealers and money laundering and that kind of stuff. So I said, okay, this is the misinformation, miseducation that you've been told through the media. And what you should do is actually attend a full day session that I can do for you. And I invited the central bank and all the lawmakers in the whole UAE into one session under the Higher Legislative Committee, which was in Dubai. And I did a full day of education to them, answering all the questions. And I brought in with me another doctor who was a person who did research on cryptocurrency and use cases around the world when it comes to legalizing cryptocurrency usage for individuals and also on state level or country level. And all of them were, the pros and cons for each were explained. And the conclusion for the whole study was that the fear was that there's no protection of assets, especially the view from the central bank. They said basically, what if there's a currency that's created and saved somewhere virtually, there's no physical, something tangible that you can hold on to. What if that disappears? How can the central bank basically protect that? And at that time, of course, when they asked questions like that, and they were asking questions something like, so who is the central authority controlling this so we can contact them? So and when I was explaining to them that there is no central authority, and they were like, whoa, who's controlling this? And we said, it's just the market, supply and demand. And they had a hard time grasping this thought, but they went back and they contacted me again after they got more information about it and went into a deep dive and to understand the technology. So after that, I started thinking of doing this for the public. If the lawmakers who you think understand the technology and should understand the technology so they can legalize it or put a legal framework or work around it, we were having a hard time understanding things. What about the public? So I started last Ramadan and doing classes, and I started with a very small group of people as a pilot. But I noticed the session I spent 3 hours to explain just the basics of how do you get your first Bitcoin and how you spend your first Bitcoin. And that took me 6 hours. So the reason for that is people who have no idea what it is. It's a huge learning curve to even understand and grasp the idea of what is this currency and how it works. So what I decided to do is divide it into 2 sessions, 3 hours each, to give them the first 3 hours of just the basics to get them going, and then give them a two-week break to give them a chance to do some hands-on, getting some Bitcoin, trading them, looking at some exchanges like BitOasis, and we use BitOasis in our classes as an example because it has the least friction when you're trying to get your first Bitcoin. And for example, BitOasis has a facility of buying Bitcoins with your credit card, the UAE issued credit card, and you get it almost the same day. She says instant now. So almost the same day or instantly, they say. Given that you did verifications or your anti-money laundering and know your customer steps, which is basically submitting your ID or passport or something like that. So after you do that, you actually have your first physical Bitcoin on their exchange, where you can send it to your wallet, send it to other exchanges, trade with it, do whatever you want with it. And that is so satisfying to the people that get their first Bitcoin, and it's so easy to do that they're actually wondering, wow, if this is so easy, how come no one else is doing it? It's a mind-blowing thing. And when they see that the speed when they send Bitcoin from one person in the class to another, and how it was, they didn't have to go through any bank, they didn't have to go through any authority, nobody even knows who the owners of the wallets are, and it was so fast, and they can look up this transaction from any website, anywhere, and they can send the record, and forever, the record is saved forever. It's just mind-blowing to them. So after that, we go to the advanced class where I teach them how to spend the money, how to do trading, investing, and that kind of stuff. And the whole idea is to get them actively involved in this economy.
Okay, so you've got, basically every transaction that happens between two people and the future is going to happen this way and no longer via cash. That's like the thesis. Everything is moving towards cryptocurrency type of method. You've got big corporates that are adopting in a major way, spending tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars in transforming their businesses into, being blockchain enabled, I guess you could say. And then you've got people that are on the ground facilitating individuals to go in there and start trading it. Okay, so you see what's going. Does anyone know like what the headline level dollar amount that Dubai is going to spend on like smart contracts or blockchain in the next like 20, whatever, 20, 30, whatever, 20, 21 vision? What is the...
I can speak qualitatively.
Okay.
Qualitatively. Let's see.
All right, so Dubai has a very interesting position in the blockchain ecosystem. So Consensys was fortunate enough to be selected as the blockchain city advisor for Dubai, and I don't say that because I want to plug Consensys, but I say that because it's really a first to bring a company that specializes in blockchain technology and say, advise us on what we're doing, advise us on how we actually make blockchain work for us. So Dubai has a very forward-thinking strategy when it comes to blockchain and adopting this technology. October 6, 2016, His Highness Sheikh Hamdan decreed that by 2020, all relevant government transactions must be on blockchain for the Dubai government. And so Dubai, in terms of quantitatively, I'm not quite sure what that means from a figure perspective. Well, what it means qualitatively is you're going to see a massive transformation, or maybe feel a massive transformation in the way that government IT and government technology works here in Dubai, with the underpinning of most systems, or I should say, applicable systems being blockchain powered. So Dubai really is kind of the hotbed of blockchain technology right now, really pushing the forefront of what this technology will mean for enterprise and government.
Can I just ask, does that mean intra-government, or anyone that does business with the government will also transact via blockchain?
So the question was, does that also mean private sector would be on blockchain? So as I said earlier, one of the promises, or I should say one of the big value propositions of blockchain is something that's meant to be shared. So it's not just going to be internally for the government. This is also a way for the private sector to interact with the government, depending on what particular use case, again, whether that's financial services, supply chain, movement of goods, there will be those touch points between private and public sector. And so yes, we do expect to see that.
Okay. Now I want to ask major themes that are happening in blockchain. So I think Dubai, everyone is kind of like, whoa, that's big. Who's next? Who's next in the region, or if you prefer to answer, what are the major themes that are driving globally in blockchain at the kind of government level?
At the government level, the major things that are really driving blockchain, you see a lot of small governments investing heavily into really figuring this stuff out and starting to play with it. So those are, and why I say small governments is, those are places like Luxembourg, those are places like Dubai, those are places like Singapore, Hong Kong, where the domain of that government is small enough that it creates a really, really perfect ecosystem to start actually testing this stuff out on a smaller scale. Blockchain technology, the first Bitcoin paper, 2008, Bitcoin network went live in 2009, and then the Ethereum network went live in 2015. So it's still very, very new. So a lot of these small governments are really acting as a prototyping ground for testing out what works, what doesn't work in that limited scope. And I think that's hugely beneficial for the industry.
Do you see other countries in the GCC or in the region that are adopting at what will be a comparable pace, or even on the same spectrum of the pace that Dubai is?
I would say that there are other governments in the region that are definitely exploring. None of them are moving at the same pace that Dubai is, for sure. Again, Dubai has, on a world scale, one of the most impressive blockchain strategies to to actually make this happen by 2020.
Okay, Arla, you are on the ground facilitating, you're a platform where people can come and trade. How has the regulatory regime affected you guys?
Before I tap into the regulatory regime, I'm going to go back to your question on trends in blockchain that definitely interest us. And we see those trends also trickling down here to consumers and also regulators looking at those trends here in UAE. I think the top one, and it's the one on everyone's minds, is ICOs. If you look at the blockchain applications, a common theme is giving access to finance. So lowering costs of transactions, access to finance for people who are banked and underbanked. And then the recent one with ICOs is access to capital for people who, projects or startups or individuals that don't want to go to traditional funds or traditional methods of financing that, raising a round for a startup takes at least 3 months all the way up to startups here in the Middle East takes them even sometimes 12 months to close a round. With the ICOs, the promise is that you can tap into a investor base that through traditional financing, otherwise you won't be able to, and obviously shorter, closing time for rounds and all that. Obviously, that comes with a lot of challenges when you look into legality and regulations. It's still obviously a nascent space and an early technology in the early stages. So obviously, it's going to go into a lot of regulatory kind of review and all that, but that's something that definitely interests us at BitOasis. That's a trend, a global trend that I think will bring a lot of value once you have the right regulatory framework and legality framework to it. The other trend that we're seeing globally that I think also would be very interesting to look into that into UAE is fiat currency being backed by blockchain. So you see jurisdictions like Japan issuing the local currencies backed by blockchain, so token-based fiat currencies. A lot of central banks on a global scale is looking they're looking into such trends because the promise of blockchain is digitizing finance and fiat currencies or tokenizing fiat currencies is one trend that's definitely interesting. I see that probably happening first on enterprise private blockchains and then moving into public blockchains. So it'll be interesting to see how that transition kind of unfolds. But that's something I think that would definitely be interesting for UAE and other GCC governments to also look into it. And eventually I think central banks are kind of warming up to the idea of fiat-backed cryptocurrencies. So those are the two trends that definitely interest us. Now in terms of regulations, if you look at UAE, there's still no clear regulatory framework for cryptocurrency exchanges, but also other companies that deal with cryptocurrencies. If you're building private blockchain applications, that's purely on the software side, but obviously as an exchange or a wallet provider, there are other set of rules that you would probably comply with. At this point, we are self-regulated, so we have our own compliance framework that we have basically derived from central bank regulations, DFSA, and ADGM, etc. We've got our own compliance team, and we work with also legal firms here in UAE to make sure that we comply with the regulatory framework as much as possible. We also do have close relationships with regulators, and we are aware of obviously their interest in the technology and some of the internal type of reviews and regulations that you've been looking at. I think at the point where you're going to start seeing some regulations in this space, obviously we'll be the first ones to get licensed and apply.
How are you licensed right now?
So we're licensed. We've got several licenses that we operate under. So we've got software, PSP, and free zone licenses at this point. Obviously, the aim is to get a license from the central bank and an onshore license. And we are in touch with the central bank on several levels when it comes to that. But today, there are no licensing for cryptocurrency exchanges. Expectation, hopefully, in the next 6 to 12 months, we'll get a lot more clarity from the central bank on that.
Doctor, any comments on that?
Yes, when it comes to regulation, as Darren and Ola explained, this is a new technology, and with any new technology, the regulators want to be very careful because once the law comes out, it's binding. You know, there are legal consequences on it, and license revocation and things like that, and it can affect the market hugely. So that's why it will take time. You know, the lawmakers here are very agile, very quick in making laws, but it won't be surprising that it is taking some time. But as we heard, they are actually nearing a law to be published relatively soon. We don't know the exact time frame, but hopefully very soon. When it comes to individuals using blockchain, there's nothing stopping you, and I've said that also in a TV interview not too long ago. That no government and no central bank can stop a person from trading in cryptocurrencies, because first of all they cannot see the transactions and they don't know what the wallets who belong to who actually. So there's no easy way of regulating blockchain usage between individuals, but there are regulations that need to be followed when it comes to exchanges. Any entry points into the blockchain economy, like exchanges or portals that facilitate buying and selling cryptocurrencies. That being said, for those, they have to follow fintech-related regulations, especially from the central bank, or if they are in the free zone, from the free zone. There are some exceptions, of course, when it comes to like payment processing, which is the license that I operate under. And also there's nothing banning people from learning about the technology. So education and awareness is not banned about this cryptocurrency. On the other side, actually, on the contrary, they are actually promoted or encouraged by the government.
How many people here have just bought a cryptocurrency?
That's definitely more than the events I attended last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad to see that.
And is someone comfortable coming in and saying, like, who's put the most amount? I don't want to ask that question. Has anyone put more than like 20% of their savings into cryptocurrency? That's blockchain, but they don't count. I get that. Okay. All right.
So,
Interesting.
I just want to comment on that.
Yeah.
So what I advise people actually in my class, and I have a couple of my students here and the audience actually, I advise them not to go head first into this economy. You know, you start with less than 10% of your salary or your income. Depends if you're self-employed or a freelancer or a CEO or whatever, or entrepreneur. But start very small. Yeah, because this is going to be a huge learning curve for you. You will make mistakes in the beginning. You might lose some money, and you are expected to lose money. As with any new investment type. So don't jump in head first. Do it gradually. Spend a couple of months learning it. Invest in the time to learn it, and not in the money. That way, when you actually, after a while of getting your hands dirty with a small amount, if you lose a little bit of money, you don't worry too much about it. But it's a learning experience. But if you lose a lot of money, then it will discourage you from continuing on into this economy, which is a huge loss for you actually. So that's my advice to starting.
Okay, I want to ask, I want to take you for questions, but specifically I want you to think about, have you stopped short, is there anyone in the audience who's like stopped short of buying, hey, I'd like to do it, like whoever bought Ethereum at $10 and now it's, $350 and I didn't do it for some reason. If anyone has one of those examples, you say, hey man, this is why I wasn't comfortable doing it. If you could think about, in the audience, raise your hand and we'd like to hear about it. Well, first let me take his question. Yeah.
My question was more towards the enforceability of smart contracts. What do you foresee as dispute resolution mechanisms, since smart contracts are automated in nature?
You got the question?
Yeah, so it was on the enforceability of smart contracts and how you can recognize the outcome or dispute the outcome. This is an area of hot discussion for sure. You have some governments, I know specifically think the state of Arizona in the US has recognized code as law for the use of smart contracts. You have other cases where governments are still exploring what does this mean. So it's very unclear. I think when I look at blockchain, and this is when you start to look at the public networks and see what is the actual impact of your code, writing good code, making sure that you take care of the edge cases, making sure that you write a solid smart contract, is you do have the digital incentive token built into the system. It is one way, there are no takebacks. That is the nature of blockchain technology. And so a lot of time and effort goes into making sure that you have properly built your smart contracts, that you have tested them thoroughly. I would say if you're using a public network, if you're using Ethereum, for instance, and you write a smart contract, that code is going to execute despite what you want to or not. If you want to have a dispute mechanism, build it in. But the network itself is very clear. It's immutable. It's one way. What the contract says it will do, it will do.
All right, Sammy.
Yeah, sure, thanks. Yeah, absolutely. Well, the problem I discovered is less sort of about buying, with every asset, buying it, but more so selling. Meaning, it's very easy to set up an account, like literally it takes minutes, you know, at one of the Bitcoin exchanges, and start buying Bitcoin. But after a little bit of research, you find that people are having actually a problem if they want to liquidate their account. Meaning, you want to close it, you want to transfer what you sold, what you sort of own in value, and get back into the traditional banking system to buy yourself whatever you want, right? And this is where then people are having the problem, because their traditional banks don't take those proceeds from closing your account in the cryptocurrency back, because of course, while it was sort of in that Bitcoin currency, it was almost in that shadow economy. So they're not going to take it back. So that might be a good question in terms of, you know, as with every asset, buying it is easy.
Yeah.
How easy is it to sell it?
Harlan, that's for you. Or that's for
You wanted to.
I'll start and
Okay.
then I'll redirect to Harlan. That's what we agreed on just now. So
That was a smart contract between them that they just executed really quick.
So the answer is two parts. So this would have been true maybe around 6 months ago, but nowadays there's a lot of ways and a lot of ICOs that came out, and also a lot of companies that allow you to very easily deposit Bitcoins into their wallets, which are connected to other instruments like credit cards, debit cards, virtual accounts, and even an exchange account or ATM. You can get the Bitcoin ATM credit. You can get credit at the drugstore or gas station in a lot of parts of the world. You can get a debit card which you can use internationally with very minimal fees. Some of the credit cards that are blockchain based or cryptocurrency based are actually totally free with very low fees. And some of the exchanges, they offer you credit cards built in and debit card built in. One example is Bitstamp. But you don't have to do that actually. You can, a lot of the exchanges, even BitOasis, allows you to take money out through your bank account through direct deposit. And it's very quick. And I'll transfer that to you.
Yeah, you can do it through the exchange. So that's one way. So you sell and withdraw back to your bank account. But why are you selling? You should just hold it.
We're not endorsing any particular positions.
Before buying any asset, it's okay if you want to liquidate it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, how do you go about it? And then researching how people sort of who are trying to liquidate it have any problems with it. Yes, it's easy to sort of buy and sell in terms of speculative, but how easy is it to get it back into the traditional banking system? And
Yeah.
I agree with the speaker there also, it might be easier now, yes, but about 6 to 12 months ago, that question was not as straightforward by all people.
Yeah, now you can do it through BitOasis. So you would issue a payout to your bank account, UAE bank account. Yeah.
I'll just say another thing. It's all through education. If you know where to go and how to spend, that's why I don't explain how to spend in the beginner class. I explain it at the end of the advanced class. Because you need to make the money first in this economy to be able to spend it. The advice that most of people who are, have experience in this ecosystem, they prefer to hold. They don't like to spend. But in some cases, you're buying a car, you're paying your rent, or doing liquidity. You need liquidity for any reason. Yes, you withdraw only the amount you need to spend, basically, immediately. One example is I always pay my maid's salaries in Bitcoin. So there's a site called coins.ph in Philippines that allows you to transfer money to an account and change it to either pesos or keep it on cryptocurrencies. And the maid in Philippines, they are unbanked, so they never have a bank account here in UAE or in Philippines, and they don't need to. What they need to do is basically go to an ATM in Philippines, punch in like a secret code, and that ATM spits out money for them. And it costs pennies to send the money to Philippines, $1.40 I think or something like this. It's a Bitcoin transaction fee, that's it. And they can keep it in Bitcoin, which a lot of them do if they don't need to spend the whole money, or they transfer it to PHP. And what they find out, the maids actually found out that it's more valuable for them to hold it than to spend it, even for small amounts of money, because cryptocurrency, especially Bitcoin, keeps on going up in value.
Yeah. Okay, so now what we do, what VentureSoup does is we exist to make it easy for people to invest collectively into early stage companies. If you can, one thing that was alluded to are these ICOs, and I want them to talk about, this is the last subject that they're going to talk about, and then they're going to be done. But for us, it's very important because basically it's gonna eliminate the need for our service altogether. We're not going to exist anymore because of this stuff, okay? So it's a very personal subject, important to me, because it's going to mean the end of this experiment. But I want people to address the craze of ICO. I want you to talk about, like, people are like, oh, it's a tulip, speculation bubble. What do you say to that? And then we'll end it up. I think that's probably what the major concern with a lot of investors is, that like, God, this is just insane. Like, it's just hyper speculation, and it's all going to come crashing down. So, all three of you, what do you say to that?
Okay, I'll start first. It's true. You could say that we are today in a bubble when it comes to ICOs. I think it's similar to any new technology, but specifically in finance, like any new financial product that is unregulated, that is not controlled or issued by any government or being overseen by any government. Yeah, you will see investors who are ill-informed getting into the space. People who just heard about a quick get-rich scheme and kind of put their money in. That actually does happen. Yeah, you see that in ICOs. You've seen that before in Bitcoin. Yeah, the market gets into a bubble and then it crashes, and then the regulators step in with sound regulation, sound legal framework, and then you start seeing companies actually building real products that are regulated and licensed. So, but the current, I think, bubble that specifically ICOs, I would say now, and Ether trading going into, is not a reason to dismiss the innovation that's happening in the space. I think recently a lot of governments have either banned or issued certain warnings around ICO. I think DFSA recently also issued an announcement around for their investor base or their consumers to be very diligent around ICOs. That is happening, but at the end of the day, fundamentally, the technology is there, it works, the innovation is there, but just like anything else, you need sound regulation and good legal framework to enable companies and consumers, investors, startups, etc., to capitalize on the value that this technology brings, and then deter any scammers or people who just want to get advantage of the fact that there are naive investors probably in this space that are just willing to throw money at it. My own advice is that, now be wary of ICOs. We still haven't supported ICOs in our platform because we understand now that the landscape is still hard to navigate when you don't have at least just basic regulation. So be careful. At the end of the day, just like any other investment you want to do your homework, educate yourself, and then make sure that you're doing educated decisions. At the end of the day, it is a risk, but you gotta vet the investment and the ICO and the team behind the ICO, etc., to make sure that you're actually investing your money in something that will bring value and something that you also understand. There's a lot of material out there as well to tap into. So that's my opinion.
I couldn't have said it much better myself. I can speak to my experience a little bit. I don't partake in very many ICOs because I'm inherently skeptical of most of them. I invest in teams and technologies. I'm a technologist myself, so I've partaken in very, very few. The regulation, people have thought that ICOs mean, I should say people who are issuing these tokens have thought that because they're dealing in cryptocurrency, because they're dealing with something that's unregulated, that they are not withheld, or I should say they are not bound to the law where they operate. And the reality is that the regulatory frameworks, the regulatory bodies are catching up and saying, look, don't think that we're not paying attention to this. You see governments and these bodies all over the world saying, look guys, we don't know exactly how we're going to regulate this. We don't know what we're going to do, but we're watching. And as a result, you've also seen some companies, the one that comes to mind first is Filecoin, if some of you here may have participated, taking steps to do adequate KYC AML checks, starting to implement the proper procedures to make sure that they are responsible with their token issuance. So I think we're going to see less of the loosey-goosey, hey everyone, I've got a token, it's awesome, here's a short paper, and more of the let's do this responsibly, let's make sure that we're protecting consumers' interests as well, and have the governments and regulatory bodies definitely take notice.
My perspective is that I teach about how to invest in this stuff, right? So what do I teach people? So in my advanced class, I teach three things. I teach how to do something called mining, which is the backbone for all cryptocurrency, or at least most cryptocurrencies right now. I teach something called master noding, which is very similar. It is also based on having